Everyone, thanks for stopping by and seeing what I'm up to. My name is Silky Feather, and you can call me Silky or Nikki. Here at Silky Feather's Nest, we are going to continue. I do believe we listened to Chapter 6 yesterday, so we'll be on to Chapter 7, Part 12. How to Unfuck Your Habitat, You're Better Than Your Mess, by Rachel Hoffman and read by Emily Wu Zeller. And without further ado.
More stuff than storage. In a perfect world, cleaning and organizing coexist peacefully. In the real world, sometimes we're good at one but not the other, and sometimes we're just terrible at both. Ultimately, before you can begin to clean, you need to uncover enough surface area to actually have something to clean. This requires organizational skills. This also, however, is where so many people stall out and give up before they ever make any progress. In its own way, organization is more difficult than cleaning, because it's not always dictated by common sense, and it's often overwhelming and frustrating. There's no shortage of books and articles and websites telling you how to organize your stuff. Most people try over and over again to get organized and end up falling short of success, only to turn around and try the same thing again. And again. Shockingly, it rarely works those times either. So it's worthwhile to take a step back and look at why so many of these organizational tips and systems don't work for so many people, and try a new approach that does. One of the main reasons we give up on trying to organize our stuff is, frankly, that it's a lot of effort. Not many of us have unlimited time and energy to devote to getting our mess under control. But here's another way that 2010s and working in small sections can come in handy. A full overhaul of, say, your closet can take hours or days, leaving you completely worn out at the end and unlikely to ever want to go through the whole process again. But when you give yourself small, attainable goals, you'll end up making far more progress in the long term, and not being so afraid of the upkeep. By tackling one drawer, shelf, or cabinet at a time, you're less likely to find yourself giving up, frustrated and surrounded by every item you own strewn about the floor with no idea what to do with any of them. We're disorganized primarily because we have more stuff than storage. There are two solutions: less stuff or more storage. Less stuff is almost always the better option. You've probably seen all the helpful tips and how to get organized lists that tell you about cute, creative storage solutions to organize a whole lot of crap you probably don't need. Everything is much easier to organize when you don't have so much of it. Not to mention that storage is expensive, takes up a lot of room, and can be overwhelming to set up. The dark side of minimalism. Less stuff can be a bit of a trap, however. The recent obsession with decluttering has its downsides. The quest for minimalism can ultimately leave you feeling like a failure if you don't get rid of every single item you own and surround yourself with a sterile, Spartan environment. You should absolutely aim to reduce the number of items you have, especially if you have a lot of things that you don't use or don't love, but not to the point where you end up chucking everything you own. Perhaps more important is figuring out what you actually need, and learning how to work with that. Let's face it, to function well in modern life, you need a certain amount of stuff. You don't necessarily need 5 of every item you own, but unless you're thinking of moving to a mountaintop and living only off the land, purging everything but your bed, one set of dishes, and a single change of clothes isn't much more helpful than keeping every item that crosses your path. Compulsive decluttering and compulsive hoarding are opposite sides of the same coin. They both result in extreme behavior that dictates how you interact with the stuff around you. Getting rid of everything you own is not healthier or any better to aspire to than never getting rid of anything at all. And yet we tend to view a minimalist home as something we should constantly be striving toward. More important than just chucking every one of your possessions, is to find a good balance between utility and minimalism. A balance that allows you to take a critical look at the things you have, use, and need, and figure out what to keep, what to get rid of, and how to organize what's left. While minimalism might seem like a noble goal, it's important to realize that it might be unattainable. If you're constantly questing to get rid of things, you may never be satisfied, because it's basically impossible to reduce your possessions to nothing. A better perspective, then, may be to look at what a realistic and attainable amount of stuff to have is. This amount is going to vary greatly from person to person and household to household, and there's no real right answer. Figuring out your minimum workable amount of stuff is tricky, and the process of deciding what stays and what goes isn't terribly straightforward. You need to consider an item's utility. Do you use it? How often? Do you have other items that have the same use? Consider its value, not just monetarily, but its value to you. Consider how you feel about it. Does its presence evoke any emotions in you, positive or negative? If something's very presence in your home stresses you out, why are you keeping it? All of these factors are important to weigh when you're examining your stuff and trying to decide what to keep and what to get rid of. And it's never as cut and dried as it seems like it should be. Redefine minimalism to fit your own life. Don't get caught up in the trap of minimalism as it's presented in books, magazines, and websites. It's a nice, soothing aesthetic, but it's really not practical for most people. Reducing your number of possessions is a great goal. It'll make a huge difference in the level of mess in your home, and make everything easier to keep on top of. Just try not to get overwhelmed making your home look like carefully staged pictures of rooms that actual people never use. And then there's the whole concept of decluttering. How do you decide what is, in fact, unnecessary? Is it all of the things you own? Everything that's taking up space? Everything that's visible? Only the unnecessary stuff? By setting up this whole category apart from cleaning and organizing, we're placing as much importance on throwing shit away as we do on every other aspect of keeping a house. And while getting rid of unwanted or extraneous stuff is a critical part of getting organized, people tend to think that once the decluttering phase is complete, their homes are magically tidy and organized forever. Getting to the point of having less stuff is important, but there's far more to getting a mess under control than just that. Put your effort instead into making sure that all of the things you own have both a use and a place. If something has a use but no place, it's always going to seem in the way. And if something has a place but no use, it's taking up valuable storage space that might be better occupied by an item that has a useful value to you. Don't try to get rid of everything you own. You'll drive yourself to frustration just trying. And don't make the mistake of thinking that once you've pared down your stuff, you're done. You aren't. That's just one part of it. You still need to do a bunch more on a regular basis to keep things in order. It's a great start, and an important part of the process, but it's just one step of many. Should it stay, or should it go? When you're trying to decide what to keep and what to toss, you need to ask yourself some pertinent questions. For example, when was the last time I used this? Sure, maybe that kitchen blowtorch seemed like a great idea at the time, but how many times have you actually made creme brulee? And how long ago was that? If you can't remember when you last used it, you don't need to hang on. Am I ever going to need this again? Admit it. You looked hot in those bell-bottoms. But ask yourself, even if bell-bottoms come back in style, are you going to wear them? Or is that phase best left in the past forever? If an item's usefulness has passed, get rid of it. Am I keeping this because there's a small chance I might need it later? So you've never been camping, but that camping kitchen set was just too cute to pass up. Sure, you can't sleep without your 800 thread count sheets, and bugs of all kinds horrify you, but you might decide to rough it sometime, right? Be honest. You won't. Am I holding on to it because I feel guilty for spending money on it? Deciding to get rid of something you parted with your hard-earned money for can be difficult. But keeping something indefinitely when you don't use it isn't going to get you your money back. Accept that the cash is gone, and aim to make your financial decisions a little more carefully next time. Gifts, or just what I needed, more stuff. When attempting to sort through possessions, many people get stuck on what to do with gifts. Gifts are tricky. They fall into a category of stuff that has a lot of emotion attached to it. Gifts inspire nostalgia, fondness, regret, even guilt. We so often feel guilty about getting rid of gifts that we end up hanging on to stuff that we never would have willingly brought into our homes in the first place. We feel like it's a betrayal of the giver to get rid of gifts, that somehow not keeping the things people give us is a reflection of our relationship with them. It's not. Why does getting rid of gifts cause us so much stress? When we have items all wrapped up in emotions, we cease making decisions about them based on their own merits and allow our emotions to guide us. That's where we get into trouble. When inanimate items start taking on emotional importance, they become far more difficult to deal with in a logical, organized way. The gift itself doesn't feel anything. The emotions that are attached to it come a little bit from the giver and primarily from the recipient. So stop worrying that you're treating a gift badly by getting rid of it. You won't hurt its feelings, I promise, because it doesn't have any. You should look critically at gifts the same way you look at any other item you're trying to make a decision about. Do you use it? Do you love it? Is it necessary? Is it stressing you out? Why are you keeping it? The answers will usually jump right out at you. You don't use it. If you love it, it's only because of who gave it to you. It's unnecessary. Its presence stresses you out. You're only keeping it because you feel guilty getting rid of it. With any other item, your course of action would be clear. Get rid of it. But the fact that it's a gift gives you pause. It shouldn't. The real value of a gift is in the giving and receiving of it. The actual item itself is far less important. The crucial thing to remember is that once a gift is given, it belongs to you, and you're free to get rid of it whenever and however you please. It's incredibly rare that the giver of a gift will demand proof of its continued place in your home. And if you think that might happen, have them over for dinner, show them their knick-knack proudly displayed, and then send it on its way to the recycle bin once they've left. The giver picked it out and gave it to you. You were, at least convincingly, pleased by it, and now the gift-giving interaction is done. It made them happy to give it. It made you happy to receive it. And now it's over. The thing's yours. Make it go away if you want it to go away. It doesn't make you a bad person or an ungrateful gift recipient if you don't hang on to a gift for all eternity. How not to get rid of your stuff. First and foremost, when you're getting rid of stuff, don't make it someone else's problem. It's really appealing to think that our discarded items will be useful, cherished items for other people, but that's not always true. Donating things is a great way to thin out your belongings, but make sure that what you're donating isn't something that you've just made someone else responsible for permanently getting rid of. Before donating anything, double-check with the organization you're donating to make sure your items are in appropriate condition and that you're following the guidelines for donation. If something is broken, outdated, or no longer useful, you're really just passing the buck on ending its life cycle when you know good and well that it was time for it to get tossed or recycled. Giving things to people you know is tricky too. Many of your friends and family won't say no when you offer things to them, but it doesn't necessarily mean they want them. While it's appealing to think these people will love and treasure our second-hand belongings, most people already have more stuff than they know what to do with, and unloading more crap on them is hardly doing anyone a favor. So often, what we give to other people in the name of streamlining our belongings becomes a burden on the people we give those things to. Then they're in the position of having to evaluate and decide what to do with your cast-offs. Don't do that to them. Think about the process you're going through right now. Do you really want to be responsible for putting another person through the same ordeal? sorting through a bunch of stuff and desperately trying to get rid of unwanted things? Your friends, family, and neighbors aren't convenient receptacles for your cast-offs. Don't treat them as if they are. A better way to go about it is to ask people if there's anything they need, generally, or want, specifically. If your brother tells you he really needs a coffee pot and you've got a spare, that decision is easy. If your coworker has always coveted your laptop bag and you were trying to decide if it was worth hanging on to, that information might help you out. If your cousin has her eye on your favorite pair of shoes, it's perfectly fine to tell her those aren't up for grabs. But hey, if you want to clear them out at some point in the future, you have a place to start. Make considerate, informed decisions about giving your stuff away. Don't just transfer your problems to someone else because it's easier for you. Storage. Once you've pared things down to items that are useful or necessary or that just make you happy, you need to figure out where the hell to put them. To do this effectively, you need to look at a few things. How often do you use it? Where do you use it? Do you have somewhere logical near where you use it to put it? Can you create somewhere logical to put it? Ideally, your storage will allow you easy access to an item, so it's quick to grab and quick to put away, and be close to where you use it. Storing your heavy blender on a top shelf behind your pots and pans is going to make it hard to get to, and a pain to put away when you make your daily smoothie. Infrequently used items can be stored in more inconvenient places, but your everyday items should live someplace where it's just as easy to put them away as it is to leave them out. The more convenient a storage space, the more likely you'll actually put things away, rather than leaving them out to deal with at some mysterious point in the future. Also keep in mind the realities of your life. If you're short, vertical storage up to the ceiling is going to be of limited use to you. You'd be better off exploring storage options that are accessible, like floor and under furniture storage. If you have mobility issues, storage that requires you to climb a flight of stairs to retrieve something and again to put it away is best saved for those things that you won't need to get to very often. If you have a cat who loves to climb, open cabinets are probably not the best idea, since all of your meals will be served with a side of Smokey's hair. What might seem like a perfect solution in theory might end up being completely incompatible with your life. Some more things to keep in mind regarding storage. Keep it closed. Open storage, shelves, cabinets without fronts, etc., tends to look messy, no matter how well things are organized. If that's your only option, consider creating a uniform front using boxes or baskets, or closing off your storage with fabric or improvised doors. Open storage usually also requires more frequent dusting. Nobody wants that. Magazines and home blogs love depicting open storage, and it always seems to look great when they do it. But keep in mind that how things play out in real life is always very different than how they look in carefully staged photos. Mismatched storage creates visual chaos. A lot of the time, we end up with mismatched storage because, frankly, storage is really expensive, and buying a matched set all at once isn't always possible. The cheapest option is usually pretty appealing, but just keep in mind that a piecemeal assortment of different storage can result in a messy finished look, no matter how much work went into the actual organization. Cheap is in no way bad. Just make sure it's cheap that matches well enough to look put together. Storage is expensive. Often very expensive. When you look at pictures of well-organized spaces with lots of great storage, those spaces usually have one thing in common. You can't afford them. And that sucks so much. A lot of the time, magazine spreads feature extravagant built-ins, closet systems, or well-constructed matching pieces. And for many people, that's just not an option. Since an elaborate storage system is out of reach for many of us, keep the amount of stuff that you have to a reasonable minimum. Your storage needs will be far easier to deal with and far cheaper to implement. Only store what you need. Don't store stuff you don't want, and don't create storage black holes. Random baskets and bins without a purpose are just asking to be catch-alls for crap you should really be dealing with in a different way. Empty storage can be an appealing trap. Somewhere you can throw stuff so you don't need to make any decisions about it and it's not out in the open. Don't do that, because you will at some point need to make a decision about the random assortment of crap that you tossed in those baskets and bins. Plus, you'll need to buy more of those pricey bins to keep it all in. Only store stuff you've already decided to keep and use. Small spaces require creative storage. Look up and down to use all of your vertical space. Store things under or behind furniture. Use all the available space in closets and cabinets, including the backs of doors. Look into multi-purpose furniture like ottomans that function as seating as well as storage, or coffee or end tables with built-in storage spots. These pieces are generally more expensive, but they'll save space and money in the long run because you won't have to pay for additional storage down the road. Don't grow your stuff beyond your storage. Once you have a workable storage system in place, do your best not to expand your stuff beyond the confines of that space. When you start needing to add more storage solutions to a system that you once considered complete, it's probably time to look into paring down your possessions again. Finding the right balance of stuff and storage is a bit of a tricky game. Don't get stuck in the self-perpetuating cycle of needing to reduce your possessions to less than what you need, but make sure that you have enough room for the stuff you have, and a logical place to put it. With enough thought and effort, you can get to a stuff-storage balance that makes sense, and doesn't empty your bank account, or force you to tear your home apart trying to accommodate more stuff than you can store. Once everything has a place, you can then move on to keeping everything clean, organized, and comfortable.
And that's the end of Chapter 7. Thanks for stopping by and seeing what I'm up to and hanging out with me here at Silky Feather's Nest. Be kind to one another, like and subscribe so we can continue our book. Thanks again. Bye-bye.